Well, hello there. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Commissioner R. Jack Cagle, Harris County Precinct 4. He's here to talk about what a commissioner does. So first of all, tell me how long you've been a commissioner now in Precinct 4.
I've had the privilege of serving for a little more than 6 years.
Okay.
October of 2011 is when I was appointed, and then I was elected for the service of the public that following March.
Now you have been a public servant for a while as a judge before a commissioner?
Before I was a commissioner, I was a judge and served for 11 and change years in the different capacities. I was the judge at County Civil Court at Law Number 1, where we handled the 3 Ds, dirt, debts, and dings. Real estate matters, contract matters, and car wrecks.
And this is something you went to school for and pursued a law degree, right?
Before I was a judge, I was a lawyer and private practice of law. In fact, owned my own law firm, had been a partner in a small firm before that. So I've had the privilege of serving this community since 1986.
Wow, very good. So this is a loaded question. What does a commissioner do? What are your responsibilities?
Well, what isn't that a commissioner does? Preachers preach, teachers teach, doctors doctor, and a commissioner, we commission. What that means is that when you go to commissioner's court, which most of your governmental entities such as the sheriff for their jail, or the constables for their service, or all of those other areas, flood control, the Harris Health Center, all the different projects that the county is involved in, the 3 Ps, police, potholes, and parks, they will come to Commissioner's Court to request that their projects be commissioned, i.e. funded. And so it's our job to review all of those requests, and there are a lot, because there are a lot of worthy things that need to be funded, and to weigh the relative needs and resources that we have and commission those projects that we can to serve the public. For example, in our budget process, if you had a clock that was 12 hours, from noon to about 3 goes to indigent health care. Indigent health care is mandated by the state of Texas for the taxpayers of Harris County to pay for, and that's about 1/4 of the budget. And then at 3 o'clock, going until about 8:30, is our law enforcement component. And that would be your sheriff, the jail, the courts that we finance, the buildings, the downtown courthouses, the justices of the peace and their staffs and their systems that are in place, the clerks, the coordinators, and of course the law enforcement agents themselves, the cops, whether they be the sheriffs or whether they be the constables in our jail.
That is a whole lot to handle. And you have over 1 million people that live in Precinct 4, all these different responsibilities and agencies that Commissioner's Court's responsible for. That's a lot of pressure. So how do you handle the pressure of all these responsibilities weighing on your shoulders?
Well, and every constituent is important to me, and the 1 million is how many we had in 2010. Now, with our growth, we're approaching 1.4, some people say 1.5 million in Precinct 4 in Harris County as a whole. We now have approaching 4.6 million people in the county, maybe 4.7. To put that into perspective, if you took all of the population of Louisiana, the population of Harris County would be larger. Or if you just took tiny little Precinct 4, which goes from Katy to Kingwood, or from Humboldt to the Heights, or from River Oaks to the river's edge near Tomball, or Jersey Village and Spring Branch to Tony's restaurant down there at 59. If you took all those various communities that we have in Precinct 4, we have more people in our population than 10 states. And so there is a lot that goes on, and every one of those folks is important to us because they have their needs with regard to the 3 Ps. You know, whether it is law enforcement protection, whether it is parks and park spaces, or whether it's the fixing of the roads. We have 2,500 miles of roads, and we have almost 300 miles of bridges.
So let me ask you about being a public servant, an elected official. Why have you chosen to do this versus just being a lawyer, being in the private practice like you were before?
When I was a young lad, my grandfather sat me by his knee and told me stories of the family. And family's always been very big to us, and how in his family, this is my mother's side of the family, every few generations we would have someone who could have done well in business or in the law, but instead would choose the avenue of public service. And that he told me that if I worked hard and studied hard and chose the law as a profession, that someday that I could perhaps pick that mantle up again, because it had been a while since we had someone that had dedicated themselves to public service. And so those stories inspired me. In fact, I had desired to become a judge by the age of 40 to fulfill that role. And my common law name is actually Cactus Jack Cagle, and my grandfather named me Cactus Jack after Cactus Jack Garner, who had been a judge and then was in the legislature and then was vice president of the United States, and he served in all three branches of government. And so that little idea had always trickled in my brain that if I followed the avenue of public service, that perhaps I could serve in all three branches by the time I was done. And so, like Cactus Jack, I began in the judiciary. And then what a blessing occurred to me when 6 years ago, this avenue of service became available. And it's a twofer job, because as it comes to my service in the precinct, I am an executive officer trying to make sure that we get things done. But then in my role as a member of Commissioner's Court, that's almost like a very small Senate. And so there is a legislative role as it comes on Commissioner's Court. And then of course I used to be a judge. And so there's my three branches of government.
There you go.
My executive, my legislative, and then my prior judicial service. And so I like to think that my grandfather would be pleased.
For sure.
That his plan has come to some fruition in that regard.
How interesting. Now, of all these things you get to be a part of, what would you say is your favorite part of the job?
I love solving problems and helping people. And so I love being a judge, because that's what you did. You solve problems. But as a judge, you looked into the rearview mirror after something had happened, and you tried to fix something that was broken. But as a commissioner, in addition to fixing things in real time, there's that pothole, go fix it now. You also are able to look into the future to try to help in the future. And to that end, we were aggressively pursuing acquiring green space along our creeks and bayous in Precinct 4, because we knew that, A, that provided a park avenue, but also that would be a place for the water to go if we had a high water event. And actually I took a lot of criticism before the tax day flood and before Hurricane Harvey of, why are you spending so much money on trying to acquire property in that area? I've not had anybody complain since then. In fact, the same people who before were saying, why are you doing, were wanting, well, why hadn't you done more? Well, there were budgetary constraints with regard to that, but we had been systematically planning for the future. And that's part of what I'm passionate about now, is how can we make this, this is a great place to live. This is a great place to serve. And how can I make it even better for my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and generations that will never even knew who I was, but that could benefit from what we do together to even improve the great place that we've given the privilege to serve in.
Awesome. Well, Commissioner Cagle, I appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk to us about what a commissioner does and the service to the public that we provide here at Precinct 4.
Thank you very much.